You too.
Aloha and welcome to the Cultivating Self show. Welcoming my guest, our guest, and my co host, Charlie, who's also a dear friend of mine and board member of the organization. Our focus is going to be rejuvenating healers, and we're thinking about maybe even calling the show that. So, welcome, Charlie.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here, joining you and having this conversation. Very important conversation for me these days.
I'm so excited that we're doing this together. This has been something I know we've been talking about for years, as you, with your background and how it's kind of come full circle for you as now an acupuncturist and doctor of Chinese medicine. And, I'm just really, it's a really important conversation for us to be having. And so I'm just really, really grateful that we have this space and we're finally doing this.
Yes, yes. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see the bridge between, how we've had this conversation, being able to change the idea that healthcare is fragmented, right? And we can bring everybody together. So I'm hoping that this conversation really kind of help us rejuvenate holistically and bringing kind of the different parts of ourselves together. So
Yeah, awesome. And maybe we should start by kind of introducing ourselves to the audience. And I will throw the energy ball over to you to just kind of keep going with it. And then, yeah, and then we'll go from there.
sure, sure. Thank you. So, my background is actually I started off in computer science. But before computer science in high school, I was pre-med. But during that time, I wasn't comfortable where medicine and pre-med was. I was coming from Asian American at the time. I grew up in the Caribbean, and so I grew up actually French, so Western from the beginning, but not American right away. Right, I had 10 years of being a French Vietnamese, and so Vietnamese is my background as ethnically with my parents. However, so that East and West was starting to already have that merger in the Caribbean. Then we came to America, and I was not experiencing the best part of Western medicine at the time. And so I chose not to go into Western medicine and go into computer science. At the time, that was
Wow.
around 98. It was computer was starting to become really popular, where like the AOL, that you guys remember, and you remember that sound that makes the computer makes
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to get to the internet and
The
trying
dial up
to have these
sound.
AOL chat rooms. So
Oh,
that's
good
when I
stuff.
went into computers and computer science, and got into technology. And my favorite movie at the time was Johnny Five. And so the idea that consciousness in a robot, right, could be conversation. And so I went into technology, and even in tech, in computer science, I I experienced a lot of limitations because there computer science at the time was very software oriented, for like really businesses. No one was being creative with that space. The dot com space was starting to happen, but no one was creating very visually appealing websites. And so I was there during the evolution of online websites with Flash, and then I got into gaming at Disney, and so I was very into the creative technology space, and really helping explain and play. Games are really what today are the apps, right? The apps have
Hmm.
become a visual representation of engaging people into your product. So what I love about gaming was really how do we pare down information to a very easy way for people to understand, right? And so today, so as a engineer tech person, I know all of us know this is basically how long do you sit on the computer? Probably 20 hours a day, right? You probably sleep half the time on that chair, after, especially now today with the Zoom meeting, you're just getting back on it and you're coding all day long. So I had a unhealthy lifestyle, in terms of being around the computers a lot, and my coworkers were computers. I mean, so it was a little bit lonely at times, right? As much as we had fun making games, life was in its own bubble, and I felt like I spent a lot of time making the money I was making being very creative in gaming, but I was spending a lot of time in trying to be healthy, right? And so
Mm.
I just felt like something was missing where like, it's kind of like living in a city, you pay to have like gym equipment to use to go be healthy. Where if maybe I lived in a farm and I had to lift some of this heavier stuff, that would be my gym, right? And so I started to feel like my life was getting a little disassociated from reality.
Mm.
Especially being in virtual reality, I was in virtual reality gaming and trying to develop games, and the disassociation of what is real and what is not, especially in your health condition, started to become a little bit more. Um, it's almost like the problem of health as you're getting older gets closer and closer in your face. That at one point you can't avoid it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
And so I actually found that all of my time doing alternative health, whatever that was, traditional health, because of my, traditional Eastern background, I struggled with some of the modern stuff. And so I was always in the outskirts learning what was natural in terms of medicine. And so in about 2018, life just decided to kind of take me for a loop. I feel like spiritually, I became a little bit more aware of my greater mission. And I felt like instead of spending my time outsourcing my health to to whatever program, maybe I should spend more time developing my health.
Mm.
And what happens is everybody who does that, they become the healer themselves, right? It's almost like by healing yourselves, um, we become people that can actually heal others. And so my life from healing myself became the why don't I just turn this into my real job? I really enjoy it. And I love like making things simpler for my patient to understand, right? Because it's really important in our medicine that the lifestyle of your patient is important in developing better health habits, better rejuvenating habits, right? Um, and so in 2018, a lot of synchronicities in my life, spiritual synchronicities, led me to take a 4-year, 4.5 year program for studying traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and that includes Chinese herbs. And that was a very it was the greatest merger between what me as an engineer, working
Mm.
with computers and electronics, and then going into traditional Chinese medicine using acupuncture and finding the beautiful relationship that the body that we have is bioelectric and chemical,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you put those needles, we specifically use stainless steel needles. Why metal? Because we're conducting electricity. We
Mm-hmm.
are working with the flow of electricity in our body. In Chinese medicine, we call it qi flow. And so what it is really just let's find the right words that matches all of our modalities so that we're not fragmented by vocabulary, but
Mm-hmm.
rather we are united by a common understanding of who we are so that we can evolve all of our modalities together rather than this very isolated mine's better than yours concept. And so I'm really excited to be able to so I was a Virgo, and astrology kind of like puts us in we love organizing things.
And we're so grateful for people like you, for the for the Virgos.
Yeah, like we love analyzing things. Some people call us OCD, and I think it's OCD because we have to organize things that maybe might be small and petty to some people, right? But like you give people really complex things to solve for Virgo. I mean, to me, like that's where their life purpose really comes into play. Like they're able to solve things that most people like, oh, that takes too much,
Mm-hmm.
nitpicking at, and like when I do acupuncture, I gotta be nitpicky. I gotta know exactly where to put my needles, right? And so
Exactly.
um
100%.
you want somebody like a Virgo.
Yeah.
He's probably like analyzing your body, figuring out the best place to put a needle in your body. So
Yes. This is this is true. Yes, and I'm so grateful that, you have found that path that allows you to merge the engineering part of your background and what you love about that, and bringing it into the health space and really being a bridge, because we are so fragmented as in healthcare, and yeah, it's a really important skill to have that I don't think that we are tapped into. We're all the time kind of, whether it's reverse engineering or engineering things as healthcare providers and healers. So yeah, so that's awesome. And I'm really, something you said really stood out to me and resonated, because this is why I'm here and why I think, you and I connect so deeply on this is that in order for us to hold space for other people's healings, you said healing ourselves allows us to really hold space for other people's healings. And so that's why we're here, right? Because we know and we've talked about this, like the statistics on physician suicide and nurse suicide. I mean, people that are working in healthcare, quote healthcare, and even alternative healers, like, or so-called alternative. I really hate saying alternative, because this is actually traditional medicine. Let's face facts. Like,
Yeah,
modern medicine is what is alternative, and it has,
correct.
and unlike, and this is a disclaimer, and I say this to everyone, is like, modern medicine absolutely has its place. Like, it is so essential. There isn't a this or that. It's an and so all that to say, circling back to my point about the fact that we are all trying to hold space for healing when we ourselves are very sick, and so that's why we're here. And yeah, so I really appreciate your story, and thanks for sharing all of that, because I think that it's important to, especially when I go to acupuncture, I want to make sure that person knows where to put those needles. That's for sure. I mean, that's such an important skill to have, right?
Yes, definitely.
And there's an intuitive piece that comes with it, right? Like, that's what I feel like is missing a lot in modern medicine is us being coming we've become so disconnected from the intuitive piece of what is medicine, what is being a healer, and that is the core of it, and where actually medicine comes from, right?
Exactly, exactly. And it's really about knowing ourselves, right? That we understand ourselves the most.
Right.
And what's really missing actually in what I notice in traditional that is in traditional medicine that is not in today's medicine is this idea that the person that you're treating is one person like them,
Mm-hmm.
unique in their constitution of that day. Because that
Yeah.
person in 2 weeks is another person constitutionally, right?
Yes.
And because of that, we pay attention to that. Where, what happens to the West, there's a lot of reduction of
Mm-hmm.
people are all this, so we give them
Mm-hmm.
all these ideas. All these symptoms should fit. And so this is where what happens is people kind of get stuck. What happened is everybody's in the middle, and no one's in these huge polarities of these disease names. And so a lot of people fall through the cracks of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the fragmentation of our healthcare has led a lot of people disillusioned by like what it is that they need to do for their own health, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good segue into kind of like me just quickly touching on my story and why I'm here and sharing that, it was through my own journey of so-called, healing, and this word is thrown around so much these days in so many different ways, but and it means something different to everyone, but really, like, myself, being on multiple pharmaceuticals just to get through the day, out lots of alcohol intake, and diagnosis of depression and ADHD and all the things, and really just becoming numb to everything around me. And when I discovered meditation and Ayurveda, and I started to really see and I really had to apply it to myself. I was curious about this for my patients too, right? And for my family and my friends. And then the cool thing about Ayurveda, and I believe the Chinese medicine is the same, so you can please let me know if I'm correct or not, but you have to apply it to yourself first as you're learning this. you have to really analyze and get to know yourself, and like you said before, know thyself. And in order to really become comfortable with these concepts, and it's a totally different way of looking at a human being. And so that was really powerful for me. And at that time I was coming through a lot of burnout in my career as a nurse, as an ICU nurse, and was able to really transmute that and wean myself off against the doctor's recommendations, wean myself off of all of those medications, started meditating, started changing my diet completely, stopped drinking alcohol. Um, you know, it was totally transformative, and that was about like 5 years ago. And so since then have been on this journey of like of just trying to discover and learn more about ways to be the bridge for this wisdom, knowledge, and through my teachers, and bringing that into my colleagues, like nurses and physicians and social workers and whoever I was working around in the hospital setting, as well as to the patients. And what was so interesting, it was just like I was doing this work, and um, we started doing retreats, and it all just happened like so beautifully and kind of came together very organically. And there was still like this, it was just very impossible for me to still remain in such a system. Like it was like I still had, I had the one foot in because I'm still working, but then in my life was like totally opposite of what I believed, and what I was practicing in my daily life was the complete opposite of what I had to do when I was at work. It felt like there was this internal conflict, and I just I had to step away. And so in May of 2022 I stepped away. That wasn't the only reason. And in fact, I mean, there's so many issues like short staffing. The week before my last day of work, I actually hurt my back moving a patient because there wasn't enough staff. And I mean, it was awful. It was like this re traumatizing experience because I already had a previous back injury for the same issue, years before. And it's just kind of this like, it becomes this loop, and it's almost like an abusive relationship. Like when you're in it, you don't it's not that bad. Okay, I make good money, I can pay my bills, this and that. But you're you're so disconnected from your heart. And so leading with the heart is what I really want to practice and embody. And so I feel like they were these two conflicting ideologies and philosophies. And so here we are, right? And cultivating self has gone through this beautiful, amazing transformation this year. It's been so magical to bring in people like you, and our other members, our other directors, like Caroline and Minnie, and you know my sister, and everyone is just coming together, this group of healers who is all so aligned and ready to bring this to the world. So that is really exciting, and I think that we have a lot of exciting things that are brewing, in our little pot for the year. But I really am just I'm really excited to have these conversations because it's critical time right now. Like we have to continue to unveil what's happening in medicine and have these conversations and create spaces where people feel safe to talk about it and to be vulnerable and to be transparent about what's really going on. And it's kind of crazy to me, like the past couple of years, there was all of this all of this information was, whether it was like us as nurses and doctors that are still protesting in the street, by the way, because of short staffing and this and that. It was like, oh, we're the heroes and all of this, and people bang their pots, at 8 o'clock in the evening and all this stuff, right? And then it was like 2 months later, it's like, okay, that's it, right? Like, well, we're still in the same situation, if not worse. So it's like, how can we come back to that story to remind the community that we are in a crisis right now, when we have, like nurses and doctors leaving the field in drones? It comes to emergency medicine, that's really concerning, right? We have to think about our family members, ourselves, And how do we be a bridge to create systems that give people options for healing? And that's why I am really, really excited about this year is like creating spaces for that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really excited for, what's happening in kind of like our culture. And so people who have also talked about this time, like whether they were in religious books or even in astrology, it's
Mhm.
really about reading kind of cycles, right? And
Yeah.
so they're saying that the cycles, it's a cycle of endings, a cycle of birth. And I think what's happening is we're noticing a little bit more of people are starting to take ownership of things, right? And that's what's happening with healthcare too. I think when it's easy to kind of hope someone can solve your problem and then you realize they don't, and eventually a lot of us have realized that we're not getting the right healthcare, we do need to kind of look at something that's useful. And I think that's why when you see the healthcare professionals leaving a system, then you know that they're recognizing that that's not a place that they can serve best, right? And
Mhm.
this is
Mhm.
really already now. I think this is more of the camel that broke. No, I'm
The
sorry, the
straw,
straw that broke the camel's back.
the camel broke its own back. Yes,
Yes, yes. The
that's
camel
true.
broke its back. It needed some acupuncture.
He does need some acupuncture.
um,
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So because I think what's happened is the limitations continue to get worse and worse when we weren't allowing open conversations about what was out there, and what's really
Mhm.
interesting is now as an acupuncturist, one of the requirements to get my degree and my doctorate degree is do research, prove with numbers that what you're doing is not just people's using the placebo effect to believe that they're getting healed, right?
Right.
Which the placebo effect one day we'll have a really long discussion about. But
Yes,
let's
yes,
talk about the
we should.
placebo, right? And so what's really interesting is that people did not wait for research to jump to acupuncture. People don't know the numbers. Even I'm amazed by the numbers, but no
Mhm.
one goes around saying, "Oh yeah, the numbers of acupuncture treatment, blah blah blah." No, they just why did they go? Right? They had nothing left to believe in.
Yeah.
Everything has, they're the last straw, right? So
That's true, and it's unfortunate that it gets to that point that, like, it always is, and I've seen this with, a lot of patients and friends and family that, you know, um, and it's that it takes that them really getting to this point of severe illness where they've been failed so much by the system and they actually are getting more sick because of these interventions and they're getting all of this different and they finally it's like a last ditch effort where they're in like stage 4 cancer or something and okay let me try acupuncture chinese medicine and all this stuff which is really I mean that's a lifestyle actually it's and then yes there's interventions as well but it is so sad to see that it really takes going through all of that and what if that was offered in the beginning and actually talked about with in a truly integrative like interdisciplinary team that has a western doctor as well as an acupuncturist as well as a massage therapist and energy worker whatnot everything like there's and what if they all consulted together and worked together? And so I'm curious about like forming these teams that are truly integrative. Where like again, people have options, and we talk about food as medicine. We talk about environment. We talk about these things that are already scientifically proven. I mean, epigenetics is real. We alter our DNA and our genetics simply by our environment. And
more than
um,
our environment, by the way, it's our mind, right?
yes, yes, our
Yeah.
mind exactly
Proven
what
that what we believe is what we create. And
100%.
as an engineer, computer science, it's one of the most amazing thing that everyone is not really talking about is
Mhm,
that
mhm.
with the idea of a lot more programmers are being getting ready to learn how to program things on the computer, what if we learn how to program our own bodies,
Mhm.
our own
Mhm.
DNA? I believe that genetics, DNA, is the computer code
Yeah.
that is
Oh, I
written for
love
our
that.
cells, right?
I
And
love that
so
perspective.
we have root access. We have access to this body by being able to be aware of it. And once you're aware of it, you have access to it. And this is where I think a lot of people get lost in being able to understand what their body has, right? Where
Mhm.
biology used to teach you minimum requirement of what your body, your organs, and all that does. And today, here we are, like, I don't think most people even know like what how many organs they have in their bodies,
Mhm.
where
I
what
think
organ
yeah,
goes where, and why are those
right.
organs important, you know?
Right. And how to support the the optimal
Yeah,
function of those organs and how they work together and yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So I feel like what's really important is giving people opportunity to have the discussions of how we can interrelate all these modalities together. One of the things I'm really excited about with the even in acupuncture, a lot of time when we have a conversation is what people understand acupuncture to be. There's kind of like a marketing branding issue, right? Where we tend to hear more like this, the the Asian folks that like hang out with each other, and you just go to an Asian guy, Asian woman, very good, very old, do some
Right.
magic on you, you walk out, I feel great. Do you know what happened? No clue, right? No clue. You barely speak English, but whatever, it worked out because you feel healed, right?
Yeah.
Um, and those are like the common stories that that like this magic has been going on for so long with our with our families and our ancestors. But then you kind of see a little bit more in the modern day has become also the alternative spa treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Affluent people are paying for it, and people who can only get it because whatever the case, like it tends to be a little bit more in the affluent neighborhood, right? It's not the
Right.
medical aspect. And so what's been interesting is I think there's a branding issue where the people in the middle are not being marketed acupuncture at all.
Yeah, and it's not accessible like you were saying, like it's only until recently that some acupuncture is covered by insurance, which that will be a whole nother episode that we're going to get into.
Yeah.
And the scams around insurance and
Yes.
how, I mean, it's, and so, and then it's only like you only get a couple sessions and this and that. And I think that one thing that it's something to kind of circle back to what you mentioned about like handing over the power to like giving our power of healing to someone else, like and I think that that's how we can connect with the people that don't may not have access. It's like, hey, actually this healing is within you. Like you are your best healer, you are going to be your best advocate, you know what your body needs. And many times we just need somebody to support that process and to remind, and so that we can remember. And it's all about remembering, like our cells remembering, our DNA, all of that, right? And so because the same thing happens with these modalities outside of modern medicine, where people go, oh, my naturopath, is this, and my acupuncturist is this. And yes, there are, it's important to have great support. And that person is not healing you, you are healing yourself, right? Like you are healing yourself. They are creating a container in which to allow that self healing to happen. Um, you know what I mean? And I
So
remember actually
yeah,
my,
it's really
yeah,
important to understand that. One thing I want to mention, because I tell people all the time too, right? In acupuncture, your body has the natural mechanics.
hmm,
All we're doing is when we put some needles in there, it actually forces the flow to kind of either reset or do something, but it's your body doing all the work for healing,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so we have to understand that, like, you know, healers need to understand because they understand this too, but patient needs to understand that like the best healing is because you are letting yourself heal. And
hmm,
I think that's the idea, even just the idea of rejuvenation, right? We as healers have to remember that we also need to give ourselves time to heal too.
right,
Because
right,
we push our bodies all the time and then we got to heal from that, just like working out those muscles. They break
hmm,
apart, but then they come back stronger. That's the healing process, right?
yeah,
So it's an
yeah.
ongoing conversation, and
It's a
that's where.
cycle, like you were saying, like, and one thing that's been really helpful for me as I've started studying herbalism and plants and is is this realignment with nature's cycles and like myself aligning with myself with nature's cycle. So, for example, right now being in the winter months, that where, the sun is now starting to come back a little bit, after we've had like now we're past halfway through January, but really like remembering that like this is the time for rest and this is the time for like all of the plants and the trees have drawn their nutrients into the roots right now, and they are not dead, but they're resting, because this isn't the time to be exerting energy and fighting against what is, like the cycle that needs to complete in order for there to be new life and birth and a more abundance. And so I think that remembering that is has been huge for me to give myself grace when I'm thinking I need to be producing and creating and all of these things, which is really just a narrative of our society and comes from comes from a very patriarchal and colonial paradigm that's like produce produce produce, no rest, and whatnot. And so that's been really helpful for me, and I think that that ties into what you were just saying, as well.
Yeah, it's that regeneration, right? Rejuvenating ourselves. So during the winter, because I've experienced a lot now with the winter here in Houston and growing plants here and dealing with the winter, what happens is the energy of plants actually go into the earth. And what
Hmm.
happens is everything that needs to die or decay because it's
Hmm.
just not strong enough, it dies off. And
Hmm.
so the winter then actually, because of it gets really cold, what happens is a lot of plant matter becomes decrystallized because of the icicles, right? And then when it gets warmer again and they melt, they basically allow the cellular walls of certain plant matter to fall apart. So by the time spring comes, it's become compost, really, really good compost,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so that's a regeneration where what no longer serves us actually feeds us in the new growth when the cycle restarts again during the spring. When you
Yes.
see the energy of the plants all come back alive now, and they are basically feeding from the old, right? And so this is kind of where like the ancestors feed us, and then
Hmm.
we feed the next generation. And so the plant is kind of like how we ourselves regenerate. We regenerate. Okay, this there's a number. I don't know exactly what number it is, but apparently we regenerate every cells, and after like 7 days, we'll hold you person or something. I don't know what the numbers are. 7 days, seven something is the number around there.
Yeah, I have to also
Yeah,
look that up because I think it also depends on like what types of cells,
yeah.
but
So in
yeah,
that
ultimately,
context,
yeah.
that's
Hmm.
rejuvenating, right? And so this idea that we're constantly rejuvenating our skin, our body
Hmm.
parts, in
Hmm.
very little bits by bits every day.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's really important to remember is that we're already doing it, constantly. Yeah,
Yeah,
like it's the skin is a great example. So,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, okay, I love to go into maybe some, conversation about what we're looking to do with Cultivate Self and what were some ideas that you like, because it's great to talk about some of the issues that we're running into in the space, in the health space. But what is it that we'd love to kind of inspire and
Mhm.
kind of get people excited about, right?
Yeah, and this is really exciting to share. And yeah, I think that what we, have been discussing and really focusing on for 2023 is really being an incubator for systems change and supporting that with healers of all kinds and understanding too that each location geographically or facility, if it's a hospital or a clinic, has its own needs and issues that they are needing to address, right? And so with that, I think that we are really excited about being able to bring people together around whatever issues are in their community and supporting them to come up with ideas in a collaborative way in groups where they can work together and implement an entire system change or implement a new way of dealing with an issue into their institution. And this could be anywhere from hospital administrators to, again, nutritionists, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I mean, anything surrounding health like is game at this point. so so I'm really excited to talk about that more and to really put that together in some sort of a conference format, like a wellness conference of sorts. And and really just like, I guess that's kind of where your hackathon background comes in, right? Like we're talking about the what is a hackathon historically, and how can we kind of hack the hackathon in a
Yeah.
way that, will make sense for what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So what's really great about the idea of hackathons, I appreciated when I went to a few of them back in Los Angeles, right? And back in San Francisco too, hackathon was really popular in getting people to kind of great minds to think about solving some kind of problems, and then from there, kind of developing some product, right? Because this is where the innovation of our civilization can come together and really solve problems in communities. But what was great in the beginning was
And the
possible,
hope too, right, Charlie?
and the
Like this is
hope,
also
right?
where we cultivate
Yeah,
hope.
right. Because the idea of hope is finding solution in problems that when problems have solution, that's hope, right? When we
Yeah.
don't have any ideas on how to solve something, that's when we get depressed, right?
Hmm.
So this idea of hackathon was really to inspire hope again, in that we are all way too brilliant to let any problems cost us our lives, right? And
Yeah.
so it was this idea of really to push social justice in the technology space. And so I think probably in the beginning you probably did well in allowing some of the better apps and whatever to get developed. But towards the end, it just felt like it was a gimmick. Like another
Yeah.
hackathon for geeks. You know what I felt like it was is like people showing off their talents, getting picked off by companies, and those projects never being made. You know,
Mm,
and
hmm.
so what happened is you have people sponsoring these ideas and then taking it in and taking all the credit for it, and the people who came up with it getting nothing, or
Yeah.
what was really, and that was where like I felt like someone was like hijacking the hope for the people, right? Where it was about the hope of the people. They were the one who were the creative minds. They should be the one developing it because they're the one who are invested, because that's the thing they noticed needed help with, right? And
Mm,
so with today in a very like what I call overarching draconic tyrannical system that goes from
hmm.
bottom, I mean from top to bottom, where they tell us what to do. The idea that we need the people to rise and
Yes.
tell the system what kind of health hospital do they want, right? And
Right.
so when we are not educated in our own health, we cannot make those decisions. And
Yes.
that's why we keep outsourcing our health to somebody that we do not know that wears a white coat. And apparently now they know more than we do, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really frustrating because even when I feel like people, it's really important to help patients open up to their problem, but not if you have a doctor or someone who is not open to their conversation, right?
Right, right. And also what's interesting, something I'm curious about when it comes to kind of a new system or um, a new paradigm of health and a relationship to healers is like bringing the healers back into the home. Because I think that, I mean, again, like, I mean, think about just traditionally, doctors used to come to your house, right? There was a relationship that you would exchange food and honor them with food, and they were part of the family, and they knew the ins and outs, and they were more than just you can get so much more information by being in someone's home as a healer. You can there's so much that you can learn about your patient by just being in the home than you would if they came into your clinic. And I know that that's very rare nowadays, but I remember it in my lifetime. Even my grandparents in Puerto Rico, like up until like maybe 10 years ago or something, the doctors were coming into the house to check on them and coming over. There was a relationship. So it's not that far away, and I wonder how much more
Closer are we
patients.
to that?
What was that?
How much closer we are to that?
Yeah, I wonder how much closer we are to that, and also how much better outcomes would be if that was a relationship um, that was more accessible. You know?
It's funny you say that. I have a hypothesis, right? I mean, this is one of my own hypotheses. If I were to push my own healing abilities, is what I really appreciate with TCM is if you know yourself, you know your disease. Guess what? Your body tells you what's wrong with you. This
Mm,
is why what we do is we look at your eyes, we look at your tongue, we look at your pulse, we look at your face.
mhm.
All these, we look at your ears, we look at everything in your body, telling us, what's going on internally, what's going on in your physical body that you may be experiencing, right? And
Yeah,
so, really, a mirror is the best diagnosis tool because it reflects exactly what's happening internally, right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and now here we are today wearing makeup or changing our face so that we are turning off these alarm system, right? Oh, don't worry about that. That's just a blemish. I think that blemish could be a problem. Don't worry about that blemish. We'll worry about it later. And then you realize, okay, now you have cancer. Well, I didn't realize that was coming. That blemish that
Hmm.
was happening that you did not want to deal with is
Hmm.
what we were saying internally could be something that we need to adjust, right?
Right.
Um,
I mean, I think it's also there's been so much catering to people's sensitivities. Like I know that now a lot of doctors aren't even allowed to bring up their patient's weight with them as a concern when they come into clinic unless the patient brings it up as like, hey doc, like I want to lose some weight. It's like that that in itself is so dangerous and concerning. I mean, I remember there being like patients that would come and complain to, when I was charge nurse in the role of charge nurse a lot, I had to deal with mitigating issues with patient families and things going on. And sometimes there would be, patients that would complain about nurses. And I remember one particular mother who was very heavy set, and the daughter was too, and recovering from a surgical procedure. And she came to me and she's like, "This nurse is fat shaming my daughter." And he was simply recommending like, hey, food options. Like probably shouldn't be having a cheeseburger. Like maybe let's do like the chicken and rice and vegetables or something like that. And that's just one example of and so there's just so many sensitivities about that when we because people don't want to be held accountable for their lifestyle that needs to make a change. And I know that, and I'm not discounting like the socioeconomic determinants of health and all of these things that yes play a huge role in certain situations. So that's a systemic issue, right? But at the same time, like we also have to sometimes we need that hard um
so
that tough love.
I think the reason why that's allowed to happen right now is again going back to the fragmentation of health, mind, body, spirit.
Hmm.
When the body is no longer fixable because we have an excess, right, in the physical body, it's very difficult to change it physically, right? The reason why is because the intention's not there, it's spirit. So what happens is we do have to go, I think, to more of a emotional, psychological conversation. I
Yeah.
think what
Yeah.
happens is, and I'm not saying, mental is bad. I'm saying sometimes we have childhood trauma that has
Hmm.
caused us a need to do something, whatever the reason is. That we are starting to realize that a lot of, mental problems that we grew up with that is programmed from trauma from when we were children.
Yeah.
Everybody has it. It's, I think, part of our cultural background to just grow
Yeah,
up.
and generational
Yeah,
trauma, all
generational
these things
trauma.
we're carrying. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago we were talking about wars and our families were experiencing war. I mean, that alone,
Exactly.
if any
Yeah.
of us have were children during that time, we have scarred for life because,
Hmm.
there's an inherent, subconscious trigger that we do because we remember these really tough times that we want to avoid again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And this
yeah.
is what we talk about, like healing that trauma could easily kind of help that person. I've run into, and so this is where the conversation of losing weight is not about a physical thing alone, right? So the mind,
Hmm.
body, spirit. A
Hmm.
lot of times we run into even people who don't eat, and you
Hmm.
try to figure out why you're not eating, right? And
Yeah.
there's this a mental block, or they're actually like overworking and they're constantly moving. We've all experienced those parents or those family members that are just like constantly moving, cannot sit
Hmm.
still. Remember we
Hmm.
talked about rejuvenating? They can't even
Yeah.
sit still, that they are burning up all their extra nutrients. And so we
Yeah, and
see this.
expending it for others and then becoming resentful because they're sick and not feeling good and nobody's doing anything for them.
Mhm.
We
And they
see
look
that a lot.
malnourished, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's not where, where I think,
And we've all been there. I mean, I've
yeah.
definitely been there. I mean,
Yeah.
this isn't a them and us thing.
Right.
It's like
All
this
of
is
us.
we've all
Yes.
been there. Yeah.
If anything, like we're trying to come at it from like we've been collectively traumatized, and so as a whole, we all need to come together, but owning it so that we're not coming at it from pity. If we own it, no one has to come at it from like I pity your pain worse than my pain. Actually, as healers, we're just here to hold space. Someone's healing someday, sometime for something that nobody might be recognizing it.
Right.
A lot of times when I do needle work, people come in for physical ailments, but they come out with an emotional release, right?
Yeah.
And
I
if
will
you're
never forget.
sensitive enough, yeah, like you can recognize it.
Yeah, I'll never forget, Charlie, the first I had gotten acupuncture a couple times for actually like that first injury I mentioned in the beginning of our talk from work, and I wasn't really feeling it. I finally found amazing acupuncturist, and he said to me, he's like, "This is stress holding. This is, I mean, there was an injury, but the other stuff when I was as that had healed and I was coming back just to outside of that injury." And coming back for like neck and this constant neck, shoulder, back stuff, he's like, "Oh, this is stress holding." And I was like, "What do you mean, Doctor O? Like, no, I mean, could you just stick some needles, put the electrodes on, let's go and do your thing, because I always feel better afterwards." And then I was just like, "Yeah." And then it just hit me, and I was like, "Yeah, this is." He's like, "Breathe. You need to breathe. You need to keep breathing. We need to like have these practices." And it's right. It's so tied to our, like, again, the mind and even the way we talk to ourselves. And this is something that I had to learn even through my practice of yoga, where it's like the things I say to myself, would I say that to someone else if I was sitting, like, I wouldn't even really even think those things about you, or just even somebody I'm not really that fond of, like, and we say them to ourselves all the time. And that is the biggest, and that resonates, that continues to resonate and manifest in physical, like we said, physical manifestations of illness. So how can we be um, more conscious of the way that we talk to ourselves, to
Yeah.
cultivate a space for, and having more compassion for ourselves? Like, we have all these compassion for our patients and for everyone else and everyone around us, and yet, like, again, we're just go go go, and it's like, no, really, like, how about having boundaries? And so again, that's where cultivating self was birthed out of this idea of giving ourselves the compassion that we give so freely to everyone else, and the space to rest and regenerate and heal, because it's necessary, especially when you're doing this work and you're absorbing all of this from people coming in, like, you're working with patients in the acupuncture clinic, or taking care of patients in the hospital, or doing Reiki on patients. That's energy that you're absorbing. If we don't have these practices of you know I guess, yeah, self-care, which is very basic and means something different to everyone else. If we don't have these practices regularly, like, we need to do it actually more than the average person, because we're putting ourselves in those situations constantly, day after day, day after day. Usually we don't realize it till years have gone by. And again, now you're facing this like chronic illness and gut issues and all of these things and wondering why. Oh, why? I don't know why I have IBS. I don't know why I have this autoimmune disease. Oh, I have no idea, but it's okay. I'm taking all these pills and I still feel like shit. And
And
it,
you
but
tell
it's
and
like,
you tell your
oh, but
patient
it's,
exactly what you need to be hearing, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I feel like this is like the idea of a conversation of like, healers are in our most of our ideas. They're modern day heroes. They are the ones you go to when you're not feeling good, right? Whether it's from
Sure.
a physical problem, whether it's from a mental problem, whether it's from spiritual problem, you look towards them for solutions to make you feel better, right? No one goes in because we feel good. Hey, doctor, I feel great. Can you look at me?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
what are you doing? You feel so good. Well, I just, I feel great. I want to spend time with you. No, I feel like shit. Fix my problem.
Yeah, fix my problem. Mhm.
Yeah.
And give me something easy to do rather than maybe address the core issues, which will require a complete shift in your lifestyle and even a reevaluation of what you're doing purpose, like, purpose wise. Like, are you filling your cup like with your purpose? Are you living your purpose?
Yeah.
These are like the fundamental questions. So I'm really curious about how we can bring administrators and people who have had trauma in healthcare and healthcare providers, again, community members, people from all walks of life. This systemic change has to be all of us, for it to serve us, really.
Yeah, and I feel like in different places there are different needs, right? Where we see a very common problem here in Houston that we might not see in Arizona per se, because the weather's different, people's different, and because of that, you want to also have your healthcare solution be specific to your niche and needs, right? You can't have someone, like they say, like I know Houston has a huge, diabetic slash, obese peoples. And so we're gonna work with obesity problems here because maybe they don't have a problem of dry mouth, dry feet, because like we are so humid here, we're not running into dry problems versus Arizona, you're running into like people drying out. So they need more liquids, a lot of heat, summer heat, always like dehydration problems, right? And so
Hmm.
the conversation of rejuvenating yourself in a place of less water would be more specific to how do we help you retain water during Arizona weather, where you're trying to maybe drain all the excess water in your body in a very humid climate, right? And so this is very important where we want also the administrators, because those are the ones we know who are going to push the papers, fill out everything to make sure the work gets done so that the healers can do their job, right? Because we all know that like you don't need a hero to also everybody be the one healing people. We need someone who are great at like pushing papers and
Hmm.
organizing, which I get
Yeah.
as a Virgo, I'm probably sitting there going, "Oh, that's not in the right category," and you just want to like push it, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
giving all of us the ability to bring in our strength naturally, but then,
Hmm.
how do we come together and solve things that we don't need one new system of medicine to solve all our problems. Actually, it's if we had the patients more involved, somehow. I think I try to tell patients all the time that, and what works really well with Chinese medicine is it has to be subtly done. It's like you got to
Hmm.
come in for like 5 days in a row or maybe once a week, for a few weeks. And then as much as we can help, it's a slow development, but it's meant to be more permanent.
Yeah, and then having that consistency of somebody, a provider that you trust, that you're seeing regularly, that can continue to be a reminder of what you already have,
Right.
in your toolbox of healing, as
Exactly.
well as what may be helpful to implement or like shift. And you're right, it is subtle, like, and sometimes, while yes, sometimes we need this drastic change. That's not accessible for most of us.
Yeah.
Like, we still have to work a job and support our kids and have families that depend on us. And so even though so those subtle things, and having a team of people that can support those subtle changes is huge. I mean, if you can't even get an appointment with your doctor for an issue that you're having, for months on end, and then you can't even get through to speak with them, I mean, how is that serving anyone? Like
Right.
how yeah, I mean, it's not even serving the doctors. I mean, I think that like there's they are also pushed into a position of having to it's become a factory of patient factory of you have to see patients one patient every 15 minutes to get your charting done and boom, turn and burn. It's a patient factory. And so that doesn't actually even allow doctors to do what they want to do, which is why most of them went and spent all their time and money and energy to become whether Chinese medicine doctors or West or allopathic doctors, it doesn't matter, like that's not why they're there. Like most of
Yeah.
them did not go through that, but
You know
now
what's
that's just,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know what would be really funny actually, because the way you're saying it, it just reminds me of like, what's the point that they're trying to do, right? So the idea of insurance, right, is they pay you when you're sick. But what if
right.
we actually changed it around? Because this is what Chinese medicine preaches. If your patient is sick, you're a bad doctor. So what
Mm.
if insurance is based on how many times you got sick?
Oh, I love that. That's a great
So
idea.
365, 100% of your salary, they didn't get sick. If that person's getting sick, right? That means you're not paying attention to their wellness during the year, that you're noticing they are
Right.
doing something. And we're not talking acute, like someone cut themselves by falling down. It's not obviously the
Sure.
doctor's
Sure.
fault, right? But
Yeah.
like, when they start saying like, oh, did you know that you are overeating and you have not been paying attention to your health? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, like you've been signing to your doctor, they've been telling you this, and you haven't been paying attention. Do you see, like, I think, what's happened is that everyone's been isolated, right? Everyone's, and then we are paying attention to the wrong thing, like where wearing a mask can protect you, but like I'm not gonna care about what you eat because what you eat
Right.
is causing you
Yes.
problems, right? But if I
Right.
trusted that I know that you and your doctor have a relationship to make sure that you are healthy, I'm never gonna get on your case, and I trust that you have that relationship to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem is how many times have we run into like, do you have the right doctor to talk to? I don't have the right doctor. And so you keep having a second opinion, right?
Or I
Because
can't get a hold of my doctor because I can't talk to them because they're so busy. And so again, they're not even
yeah,
accessible to people I mean,
exactly.
I've been watching my mom go through like this trying to get in touch with her doctor for an issue that she's been having, and she couldn't even get through over like an email, and it's just like it's so heartbreaking, and it's like, and even to get a second opinion, then this person doesn't know her, and that's also very re-traumatizing and frustrating, for somebody who doesn't feel good. It's really unfortunate, but I love the idea of an insurance system that actually incentivizes bringing people, helping support people come to health. And most of the stuff we're dealing with is chronic illness anyway.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
like, which is, and all of this chronic illness is is mind, is mind centered.
Chronic
Like,
illness is where most of the people fall through the cracks, right?
yeah,
Because they're
yeah,
not too, like, I'm sure all of you experience this. You're not at the red line. So please come back in a few weeks or months when it gets
yeah,
worse, and we'll do another test to see if it's bad. We'll give you then
yeah,
medicine.
yeah,
If not, you're not at a bad position. See you later. Even though
yeah.
I'm feeling pain and like, well, here, take some of these medicine to get the pain away, but things are
Yeah.
okay.
And that reminds me of another, yeah, that's more about also like the philosophy of this medicine, which I would love for us to do an entire episode like on philosophy of allopathic medicine and traditional modalities, and how different that is, and what they're useful for and whatnot. And I'm so many things that we can cover, but really just getting to the core of like how can we create systems that actually serve people, because right now what we're seeing is is an opportunity for us to make that change. And like you were saying in the beginning of the show, like whether it's been prophesized by indigenous cultures or from all over the world, and we've talked about this, like this is the time Like what did you say that what you were saying earlier, the age of Aquarius? Yes, right?
Yeah.
This is the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, the age of Aquarius is really where everybody's knowledge individually comes together and creates a really beautiful tapestry, right?
Hmm.
It's when we, instead of getting too involved with each other's business, we become sovereign. And when we become sovereign, can we really actually work together? The problem we have in working together is everybody feels they don't have enough. So it's kind of like exactly how like people say radical, what are this called? Radicals in your body, and they leach off
Oh,
electrons.
the free radicals.
Free radicals, right? It's the whole idea. It's also electricity in your body. Why you have voltage problem and why you have then problem in your body that doesn't have electricity is you have this electron leaching problem, and these free electron is this negative energy that is getting spread, and it creates a chain reaction because it's not stable.
Hmm.
Because you're not stable, you're easily excited, right? And so that causes extra energy to kind of go wild. So it's really interesting where like versus if you can really like tune your body to be at peace with yourself, right? In a basic level where your body's balanced, then what happens is it starts to kind of connect to the network of each other. And so for us, if we are easily excited or under, right, like a free radical, and we missing like life is not good enough, and so we're upset, depressed, or whatever. We feel like something's missing, so we need each other to fill each other, right? And so when someone is kind of missing energy, they need to go leach out to somebody. We call them, we've heard of this energy vampires,
Oh yeah.
and
No,
there's
we know that.
energy, and so that causes then a chain reaction among people. Then now everybody's kind of stealing energy from each other, and then it becomes very parasitic.
It
you know
becomes like a negative, like a feedback loop.
right, and that's a chain reaction similar to
Hmm.
our body. This becomes inflammation. The body has to
Hmm.
kind of adjust it because everyone's fighting for this free electron. But when there's electrons, where there's an abundance of electron in a basic body, then there's more than enough electrons to go around. No one feels like they're missing. So when everyone's full, right? Like they're full of their heart, they're always giving extra. And so when everybody's giving abundance and extra, then the system works actually even better, right? Because it
Right.
becomes logarithmically creative together versus instead of stealing from each other, everyone's always losing something.
I love that you just said the abundance piece because that's something that has been coming up for me a lot and something that I've been noticing in my travels and in relationship with others and as I am on a path, my own path is this abundance mindset and how we are now breaking away. And like you mentioned before, like our ancestors that come from war, histories of war and colonization and like that mindset of that scarcity mindset and breaking away from that because that whether it's about physical things or ourselves, like that abundance mindset where like I am happy in my being, I am abundant and I can create what I want, rather than like I need you to do this for me and I need this and then that just creates the tunnel vision and you it's not expansive, it doesn't support that process. So if we're constantly in the scarcity mindset, I need more money, I need a house, I need this, I need that, in order to feel complete and be happy, like how it's never ending, right? It's just you're just in the rat what is the rat race
Right,
or
right.
like the
Yeah,
hamster
yeah,
wheel.
yeah, exactly.
And so and how much of that mindset, again, like we talked about mind and body and spirit, how much of that scarcity mindset is what is impacting the physical, right? And we don't talk about that in allopathic medicine. And there is scientific data that is supporting this. Even though that you can look to if you want. However, Vandana Shiva said this so beautifully. Like the highest form of scientific evidence is life. And we have thousands of years of evidence that shows that this is what that like these traditional modalities of healing are what supports life. And so how do we remember, about how do we shift our mindset? And so I love that, because I think the abundance piece is key, and in bringing that into like our like daily affirmations, or and in conversations, reminding each other is so important, because we can very easily become susceptible to those energies, those scarcity energies around us, because it is so prevalent, especially right now, feeling it strong, even in
Yeah,
places that are so abundant. I mean,
yeah.
look behind me. I'm in this like beautiful, beautiful setting. I'm in Big Island, Hawaii, and I mean, there's on this regenerative farm, and there's so much abundance here. It's such a good reminder, and yet I'm finding myself surrounded by folks that are in still stuck in this like loop of scarcity, when I'm like, just look around, and so that's really interesting. And they're, suffering from all this chronic disease and illness, and so sensitive, and it's like it's so it's concerning, and it's important for us to come back to that, so that we can embody this and feel good within ourselves despite what else is going on around us.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like time is very important to understand the battle in rejuvenation and regenerating. Uh,
Mm,
I think we have been taught to believe in a construct of time that is disharmonious to our rhythm.
mm,
And this is
mm,
where I love the idea of where they say all the time in the metaphor of nature, right? It's like, why are you moving so much? Why don't you just sit still? I'm like, if I don't sit still, I don't do anything. Look at the trees. They do way more doing nothing than you do doing something. So why don't you just pay attention to nature, because they're always doing something
mm,
by
mm.
doing nothing, right? And you're just like,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
wait, wait, what? Right? And
What just
so,
happened?
exactly,
Wait a minute,
right?
I'm so confused. And you're like, wait a minute, no, I have to be doing something.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's the same idea also like a surfer, right? You think a surfer tries to ride waves when the waves aren't there? No, right? Because
Oh.
you only can ride a wave when a wave is there.
And what's so interesting is in that space of nothingness, like when you are, or kind of when you're not riding the wave. I surfed for the first time like back in August here in Hawaii, and it was like so life changing and transformative. And in that nothingness, there was so much beautiful, expansive, like just peace of mind. And and I can imagine like that I was like, oh, I get it, like I understand why these surfers come out here every morning, at crazy hours or whatnot, to not yes, it feels good to catch the wave and ride it, and just being in that space, like waiting on the water, that is so magical. And it's like, it was just really, so I totally see what you're saying there. I'm just like, ugh,
Yeah.
reminds me I got to get out there and try and surf again. Although
Yeah.
I did get really bruised up and
It's
kind of
part of
beat
the
up.
process.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's part of, right. There's a learning curve.
But that's, one of the beautiful things is also just understanding how the elements work within ourselves, how they work in our world. And once we understand that, we understand that there's the same patterns in our bodies, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
it's
You have the
really,
fire, the
yeah,
water, the earth, the air, all of it's there.
exactly.
Everything's there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I feel like this idea of like the cycling, right? Like if you're thinking like every day, you wake up, you do the same thing every day, every day. However, what if you saw the cycle in a whole year, right? And how the summer's your peak, your winter's your end, and that's a flow. And so if you see life through that flow, you have so much time in the world,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm,
because if you saw the time in the world that way and you don't try to like nitpick it every day, every day, every day, you know what happens? Your priorities change, right? Because a lot of times we are triggered by something outside of us that says, do this, do this, do that, do this, right? And so you have a list of things you have to do, right?
mhm,
Because you
mhm,
live every day by doing something. But then you see the world through a whole lens of every day, through like a whole year, life changes. Maybe what you kept saying you wanted to do, and you look at it from a bird's eye view, and you're like, I did it for like 2 weeks, and in the grand scheme of things, it didn't even pan out anywhere. Why did you even try it? And so what happens, we'll start discerning our own time that is important versus a time that we thought is important because we live in a do something world.
mm.
right? And that's I feel where we lose our rejuvenation, right?
Yeah.
How do we heal without losing energy? Like, can I sit here and do an acupuncture needle? Can I just sit here, listen to someone, say, "You're doing great," and then use no energy, but being able to actually receive the energy and then, reflect it back. I didn't use energy, but I may have healed someone. Maybe listening to someone allows them to heal, right? Because no one was listening to them. I
Yeah.
believe everybody that comes in because no one can believe their pain. So who
Yeah.
else is going to believe them, right? I
Mhm.
don't care if
Mhm.
I I get so frustrated when people come and tell me that my doctors don't believe my pain. I'm like, there's
Mhm.
nobody else to believe but you who's actually in the body feeling it. There's nobody
Yes.
else that you could trust, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just really silly that it has to be a give and take. I feel like life is abundant when you stop trying to give and take, right?
Mhm.
But you see that everything's always just flowing with
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
There's always
Right.
something going on, and maybe you just sitting there waiting for the right moment gets you more out of life than you trying to do something, right? And then the world shifts this and then resets you, and you're like, you could have just waited.
Yeah, it's a getting out of the forcing, right? And I think like having forcing when everything is going against what we're trying to force, it's kind of it should be a red flag. Like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Let me just wait. And I think that idea of sitting and being still and waiting and even having to sit with your own thoughts is really challenging for us. It's really it's a very different practice than what you're used to, because when you're constantly on the go, doing, go go go, you don't sit with your thoughts and you're not actually able to be still, and not actually, like we were talking about cycles, right? Like that cycle needs to happen. There needs to be rest, and part of that rest is the silence, that comes. So
Well, so speaking of a cycle that exemplifies exactly what we just talked about, COVID.
mhm.
How many of us were ready for the cycle of our lives to just take a break and we enjoyed that break? How many of us changed when life stood still and you realized your life was in a good shape and you shifted, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
so um when we have to naturally take a break, well, you're supposed to do it and then you can handle big changes like COVID. When COVID happened and people were not taking a break, what happened to their lives? They were forced to take a break,
mhm, mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So the universe will force you whether or not you want to or not,
exactly.
and that's where, you know, um, it's really important to trust that there's more to us than just us ourselves, and that's the spiritual healing I hope people can have. I don't care whatever you would like to choose terms for whatever this invisible powerful being that is like connected to all of us, who all of us are connected to each other, whatever
Exactly.
that force is, so people want to call it, but that gives us spiritual hope, right? And
Mhm,
that gets us
mhm,
out of really tough mental breakdowns where we feel like, oh my God, what is all this for? And there is a greater purpose. And
mhm.
sometimes knowing there is a greater purpose and feeling like this was just an experience I know, you were not meant to experience, like I
And
feel
that you
like
don't have to take it on. Like, this doesn't have to be yours. Like you just said, there is a whatever that greater purpose is. Like, we don't have to understand it, and we probably never will. And that's okay, because that should actually be somewhat of a relief that
right,
we
exactly.
can we can just be. And I love that you brought up the spirituality aspect, because I think that is also one of the, and I would love for us to do a whole episode on it, because spirituality is really just the interconnectedness of all things, right? You don't have to subscribe to any religion to notice that. And so when we remove that from health, what are we doing, right? So because if my patient is not feeling good, that's going to affect me, that's going to affect their family. There's a ripple, right? So that right there is showing the spirituality of all of this. So that's just one small little piece of like,
Right.
well,
So
we can't separate them.
here's what's trippier when you start to understand those lessons is when you start to notice that your patients sometimes will reflect what you need to hear for yourself.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so that's why I say, like, my patients are there, are sometimes there for me too. They're there to
Yeah.
heal me. I am not there to heal them. And it's very selfish when we say one person is over the other, but maybe it's a dance between the two, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it's important for
It's a
us.
collaboration.
Exactly. That's what's
Mhm.
important for us to think about, solving healthcare with every part of that equation together, right? From the people who are the patient to the healthcare professionals and to the people who build structure around that space,
Yeah.
administrators or whoever.
Yes, yes. And that was one of the things that I noticed as the biggest issue as I was trying to bring a lot of what we're doing with cultivating self into the hospital space, which was awesome. I mean, we created the reset room, which is a space just for for all the healers, the entire hospital staff to utilize, and basically like a Zen room. We created that, you know, with the support of hospital administration. But if the administration isn't embodying and practicing this, it doesn't matter what you offer to your staff. It doesn't, the system will not, is not going to change. And so that was one thing I noticed was that there was so much hypocrisy around, okay, well, here's what we're going to offer for wellness for the staff. And, you know, um, we, but we don't need to do anything. Okay. Like this is for them. This is for them. I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing in your life? Like what's going on with you? And I think that that's when it does truly become collaborative, and that one person is not above the other. And if we are going to be creating these facilities and these spaces of healing for people, the community, it has to, it can't be this trickle down system. It has to be um, truly truly like what is that word I get, like egalitarian, where everybody is practicing this together. We're holding each other accountable when we're not practicing it, um and that just isn't the case currently. So whatever we're creating with cultivating self is you know, in these collaborative groups is there's no hierarchy. Nobody is better. I don't care how many degrees you have. You know, and you're no better than, you know, this person that never went to school. You know, so I think it's about seeing each other in that way, and that we all have something from our lived experience, this life, whatever life before and whatnot, whatever you believe, we all have something to bring to the space because we are all in this human body and experiencing this life together, and we are all connected. We just are. So
Yes, yes.
yeah. So this is so awesome. This has been such a great conversation. Do you feel complete, Charlie? Is there
Yes, I
anything else you
do.
want to?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I just kind of wanted, just to put it out there for our audience. If anyone's really interested, have been, in the space of healthcare or feel like, we could do some changes, are excited to kind of see what kind of changes are willing to do some work together. Join us, join the Culture of Itself newsletter and website and kind of our network. Let us create some kind of, like ongoing hackathon where we're really trying to come up with some ways. So like this, the Zen room and the reset room is a great way that Culture Self did. And what we're trying to do is generate more of those, right? Like how do we collectively hack at our healthcare system so that we're not waiting for administrators to tell us what to do with the money that we're spending anyways to do healthcare anyway. You're paying to go see those doctors. Why can't we be involved in getting the right healthcare that we need to? And vice versa. How do the healthcare professional feel complete? So they are going to show up constantly for us. You don't want someone to go, "Oh, I'm just too tired to take care of you today." Then, clearly, like that's not the best use of our money if our own healthcare professionals are suffering, right? Um,
Right. Right.
so how
Yeah.
do we make their job, amazing for the rest of their lives, as much as they would want to, rather than be burned out because they just don't have enough, what is it, oil to keep their light on, right? So
Oh
those
yeah.
are the conversations that we want to have constantly through the show, bringing everybody who's interested to have these conversations. We're not here to break the system. We're here to augment the system with people-centric ideas, because
Mm.
that's where we feel like we can rejuvenate each other as healers, because everyone is a healer.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I love that you said people centric. That's because that's what we're about, you know. It's people centric, heart centered systems, and everyone's needs are going to look different. We're such a huge nation, and we're really focused on um, individual, you know, like what are your needs in your community, in your facility, in your clinic, and how do you want to shift the culture? And that's what we're here to do is to shift culture and to create more that will create more connection and more what is the word mutuality, right? So we'll have more mutuality. It's not one way healing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what
So
if we were to redo the whole referral system of Western medicine, right? Like, I'm an acupuncturist. I love to refer to a nutritionist, to a
mhm.
yoga person, right? Because physical therapy needs a new version of physical therapy.
Yeah, and
Nutrition.
there's a lot of physical therapists I know. I mean, one particular that was super helpful for me, that who has been studying yoga for 20 years, and her whole physical therapy consultation practice is very yoga focused and tai chi and qigong, and so what if we had more practitioners like that, you know, that have that can bring this wisdom and truly integrate it.
Yes, yes. So I'm very excited to see what kind of projects we come up with that. So thank you
Yes,
for the
me
opportunity.
too. Yes, thanks for joining the ride, Charlie. I'm super excited. And if anyone wants to join, cultivatingself.org is the website. We are revamping the website, so please be patient with us. But you can also email us, cultivatingselfnow@gmail.com, to get in touch if you want to volunteer, if you want to join the team. There's always a need, and we're looking to grow this community. So, looking for people to step up into leadership roles, and we need more leaders. So, I know that you guys are out there. So, please connect, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.